Welcome back to Seavine News Network. This is Linda Forsyth, and today is June 16th, 2019. This video is of unusual importance because as of tomorrow, on June 17th, 2019, is the first day of the next round of the KSM et al. Military Tribunals. KSM stands for Khalik Sheikh Mohammed et al. Means and the others. So there's a total of 5 individuals that are being tried in these particular tribunals that were all alleged terrorists for the 2001, September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. So the reason this is of importance, there have been many things that have been going on behind not only the scenes, but also what we have been going over since January 28th, 2019, since the beginning of these pretrial proceedings that have been happening. We will be going over a couple of things that some of you that have been keeping on top of this from the beginning that may be old stuff to you, but there are going to be many individuals that have not seen or heard or anything having to do with the beginnings of these tribunals. So what we're going to be going over is in preparation for what you are going to be hearing starting tomorrow on June 17th, 2019 of the KSM et al. Tribunals. These tribunals coming up could be of monumental importance. We don't want you going into these with at least having a little bit of background information and also some information for you to consider before you go in and listen to what the reports are. So let's go ahead and get started. I do have on our website, c-vine.com, the actual article of what I'm doing here right now. This video will be attached to the article, and I will also have the actual link to this particular article that has links to all the various different websites and information that backs up any and all assertions that I make this evening. So please go there, check it out. You can either follow along as you're listening to this video, or you can just go there and just read. But what is going on in this video does have more information. The other videos you can listen to also will go into more information that I'm going to be providing here because I am not going to be playing the entire videos. All right, let's get right to it. This particular article and video has to do with Tribunal Watch, getting ready for June 17th, the KSM et al. Tribunals. President Trump promised this July 4th would be the most epic ever. The next round of the KSM et al. Military Tribunals begin tomorrow. I say here in a couple of days. I had written this a couple of days ago, but it begins tomorrow on June 17th. And it's actually the last tribunal before July 4th because they hold these once a month and they are the pre-trials. Now, does one thing have to do with the other? Quite possibly. This report on June 16th will go over the immediate changes and updates going on at GITMO. But I'm also going to lay out some possible events that could happen, kind of like a what-if type of scenario. Here's a hint. Could there be a release of certain information that could act as a domino effect to bring down the entire swamp in one full swoop? You'll decide for yourselves after you listen to what this has to say. It says new updates as of 6/14/2019. I will be updating that to June 16th, 2019. On the last day of the KSM et al. Proceedings, in fact, in the last statement of the day, defense counsel in open court and on transcript made the statement that he wished the judge well on his new reassignment if he didn't see him again. It was at this point the public learned of the presiding judge, Colonel Keith Perella, would no longer be presiding over the KSM et al. Case, and another judge would be in his place by June. Now, these are just immediate updates that have not been brought out to you before, and just for your information. Colonel Keith Perella is now officially the commander of the U.S. Embassy Security Forces worldwide. This was the judge who since, well, actually he was assigned to these, the KSM et al. Tribunals last August in 2018. But the pretrials didn't start until this January. And so this is where you have heard his name. And that is who has been in charge of this all up until this very last tribunal, which was in May, very last proceeding. In fact, the very last statement that was made was brought out that he was going to be reassigned. Okay, the new judge has been reassigned to replace Colonel Perella. Just so for your information for tomorrow, U.S. Air Force Colonel W. Shane Cohen is now in the official capacity as the presiding judge over KSM et al. And has already issued his first rulings excusing several lawyers from attending. That's just his first rulings. There have been murmurings where a Supreme Court justice questions the endless detention of the GITMO prisoners. Well, that is something that we will go over at another time. We will bring up a little bit about this later on today, about exactly what they are talking about. But just FYI, many prisoners are being held there at GITMO without trial, and some who have been brought to trial had their case dismissed without prejudice. All of the individuals that are there are of Middle Eastern descent, and they have been detained there since the time increments around 2001, some a little bit before, for other types of alleged terrorist activities. But all of them have to do with terrorist activities around that particular time. The KSM et al. Tribunals have to do, all of them, within 9/11, 2001. Note, during times of war, former President Bush and Congress made a ruling that prisoners could be held at GITMO under the classification of AUMF, which stands for Authorized Use of Military Force. In other words, they were a type of prisoner of war and did not have to be accused of a crime to be held. There are a total of 40 prisoners at GITMO right now. At present, a total of 9 prisoners are in trial. The remaining are considered AUMF and haven't been accused of a crime. All detainees are Middle Eastern descent. Those are the immediate updates. Now let's talk about what could happen during the week of June 17th by discussing what is going on now and recently in the past. June 17th, pretrials U.S. versus Khalid Sheikh Mohammed et al., or KSM et al., are actually 5 alleged terrorists who may have orchestrated the 9/11/2001 attacks and are all tried together in these pretrial proceedings. Normally, pretrials are rather humdrum because they're used to determine rulings on motions brought before a judge in advance of the actual trials. But these pretrials that have been going on since January 28th have been action-packed bits of saga, and a number of interesting things have been divulged. I'm not going to rehash what Seavine has already reported in the past, but there are a few things that will be brought up today as a reminder in preparation for the week of June 17th. In a recent report we released and also prepared for you a YouTube video that has gone into detail about all the drama behind the scenes at GITMO and why some of this could impact the proceedings coming up and in the future. In fact, some of these already have impacted proceedings in the past. Click here, which right here we do have a link, and I am just going to show that to you here. It is called Military Tribunals Behind the Scenes equals Angry 9/11 Victims and Family. There's a bunch of information in this that if you would like to know about what has happened beforehand and also behind the scenes, it would probably be of quite a bit of interest to you to go over it, because we go over it in quite a bit of detail and also give, again, links and or information that back up all assertions. Okay, so going back, at the end of this report, we will also be reprinting the names and charges of all the trials actually going on in GITMO right now, and for your information. This is so you can be completely apprised of everything that is going on at present. All right, past points for consideration as we move into June 17th, the KSM et al. Proceedings. Okay, so note, reminder that the KSM et al. Trials are all alleged orchestrators of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Number one, on March 25th, it came out in open proceedings that the FBI had a number of taped phone calls of what they called chatter, at least 6 months in advance of the 9/11 attacks. Apparently, there was a recorded 118 phone calls that were traced to 25 separate lines that discussed the planning, funding, and orchestration of the 9/11-2000 event before it happened. They also have a linguist who positively identified the accused. Now, I am going to go over that briefly right here from a previous report. This particular report, I'm only going to show you about 60 seconds of it.
Hi, welcome. Leonard Bacani from CV News International. I'm here, as you can tell, in front of the White House, reporting on the military tribunals at Fort Meade. And at the end of the day, the judge had suspended all further proceedings until further notice because he wanted to have a closed-door hearing. In other words, between him and the attorneys, we're going to discuss things of confidential nature, and they didn't want that out in front of the cameras or the public. So they were going to have closed-door hearings, and the judge hopefully will resume the proceedings on Wednesday. I have a direct line to the public affairs officer at the military base, and they are going to text me if they resume. We're going to have the transcripts posted on our website, c-find.com. Make sure to go to that and download that after it's been approved by the Department of Defense. And hopefully, like I said, the judge will resume the tribunals Wednesday. So what happened yesterday? Almost the entire day, you had one defense attorney, and that was James Cottrell III, prominent in arguing most of the motions yesterday in front of the judge. What's interesting is James Cottrell is the lead defense attorney for al-Baluchi. And if you've been following our C-Vine articles and videos, you know that al-Baluchi is the money man. We know that every time you follow the money, that is where the action is. Not necessarily the head of the organization, not necessarily Mohammed, but al-Baluchi knows who's involved, what's involved, where the money's going, and he's the financier. Prior to the judge announcing that we're not going to be any more hearings until they can have a secret hearing, or at least beyond the purview of the public, one thing that was prominent in that they were talking about things that even James Cottrell could not say. He was under court orders not to argue things or mention things as far as means and the methods of three-letter agencies collecting their evidence. So what came out yesterday, and this is very important, and this is, I don't know if anybody else is reporting this, but you're hearing it from CVINE. What came out yesterday was that our government knew of the plan prior to 9/11. Let me explain that. Between April 2001 and October 2001, the CIA intercepted chatter from these terrorists. Okay, this chatter consisted of 118 calls that they intercepted from 25 different telephone lines. We don't know how many people were talking on each line. It could be one, it could be a dozen, who knows. However, so we don't know exactly to the extent how many people. We do know that a linguist had positively identified these subjects that were in custody as being the people behind or talking on the phone. So that's interesting. That came out. These intercepts were made between April and October of 2001. The 9/11 attacks occurred in September of 9/11. So they knew the plan prior to 9/11. They probably didn't know the extent of it as far as when it was going to occur or exactly where. They did intercept that traffic. So you're hearing it here. We're breaking it from CVINE News International.
Okay, so there was a little bit of an update from that. They do know that at that time there was enough information that they did know not only who, but what, where, and how 9/11 was going to happen. More information has come out. This information is in the transcripts of these pretrial tribunals having to do with the proceedings that has been going on with one of the alleged terrorists, al-Baluchi. Now, these particular transcripts and everything are limited because there were other proceedings that went on in closed hearings. These closed hearings were purposely done for a number of various different reasons that we're not going to go into here, but these are all reported on previous reports. But the closed proceedings had all the information in it about the names, dates, times, situations, and so on. So that did actually come out, but those are in closed, for the most part, sealed hearings, so to speak, until then. So when we go on to number 2, any proceedings in years past that discuss the method of surveillance, who was behind it, or even the entire contents of the tape calls were always held in closed proceedings. Now, we're going way back. This has come up many other times, not in just these particular military tribunals, but through other proceedings that were brought about. And so that is a matter of public record. Number 3, if our government knew who was doing the planning, what was going to happen, where and when, why weren't appropriate measures taken to stop it? Now, that isn't about what these particular military tribunals about. They're, al-Baluchi is being tried. But my question is to the American people, actually to the world. If this has been going on and they knew what was going on and they know the how, who, what, when, and where, why hasn't this information come out? Well, apparently there were multiple attempts from 9/11 survivor victims, which is number 4 here, and family members of those killed who have tried to force the government to release the names of those caught on tape. As of this date, there has been no success. So there have been multiple attempts to get the government to release this. And as a matter of fact, on May 13th of this year, there was a Fox News alert, a Fox News release that had to do with these family members and victims of 9/11 that were taking this very question, this very situation, to federal court in New York. And so I'm going to play to you the Fox News release that happened on May 13th of this year.
Fox News alert now on new court action linked to the deadliest terror attack in American history, with the families of 9/11 victims now before a judge. Welcome back to America's Newsroom. Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Those families want the FBI to release the names of those who helped al-Qaeda from inside the U.S. before the attacks 18 years ago.
David Lee Miller is live outside that courthouse in Lower Manhattan for us. David Lee.
Sandra, survivors and relatives of the victims accuse the U.S. Justice Department of shielding Saudi Arabia's alleged involvement in assisting some of the attackers. Now, the families are suing Riyadh, claiming that the Saudi government specifically provided assistance to some of those who took part in the attack on 9/11. An attorney for the family says despite repeated efforts, the U.S. Justice Department has refused to release redacted portions of FBI documents that could allegedly implicate a Saudi government official in the terror attack. Relatives and victims say that they are outraged by Washington's refusal to name names and provide information.
Our government is complicit in a cover-up that is still going on today, and we are being, as victims, we are being re-victimized because our government has not been compliant in forthcoming with these documents.
The Justice Department is citing national security interests as one reason some of this information has not been released. Ultimately, a judge is going to decide. A hearing at this hour now taking place in the courthouse behind me. But Sandra, it has now been 19 years, nearly 19 years, since the attacks of 9/11, and no immediate resolution is expected, at least not today. Sandra?
We'll continue following the developments there. David Lee.
Okay, there's something
Fox
here
News alert now on
that I need to bring as an update here that is not mentioned. Remember in the Las Vegas terrorist attacks where so many people were shot? There was soon after that in Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Salman, who they feel that there was a coup going on against him. He was in Las Vegas at the time. They feel that there was actually an attempt on his life, in other words, a coup to remove him, because he is now the new crown prince in Saudi that is replacing Prince Alawi. And it was Alawi who had been pretty much in charge, etc., before then, along with many other situations that have been happening. Now, Crown Prince Salman, after the attacks in Las Vegas, if you remember, had put just about the entire Saudi official government under arrest, along with high-level executive business individuals and so on. He locked them all down. And so the individuals that they are talking about in this Fox News report happened before King Salman, Crown Prince Salman, had pretty much did a lockdown of individuals that were in charge earlier. I'm just bringing that up as an important point of interest. Now, in the transcripts from March 25th, this is in number 5 of the KSM et al. Proceedings, it was brought out that one of the identified tape subjects came from an institution. Now, keep in mind they had a linguist on all these taped phone calls that identified the individuals that were in these taped phone calls since then. So they have a lot more information than when they did initially. But they most certainly had heard about who and when and what and where these individuals, what they were saying, who was talking to whom. But one of them was a representative of an institution. That's all it says in the actual transcripts from March 25th. You can read that there, but I do think that is a point of interest. Now, number 6, this is something of particular interest that you will want to take note of. And remember, the accused plotters were charged on June 6, 2008, but President Barack Obama halted that trial to consider whether to hold it in a federal court in New York City and to ultimately reform the Military Commission in collaboration with Congress in 2009. The Reformed War Court gave the accused Pentagon Capital Defense Counsel and forbade the use of coerced testimony or statements derived from torture in confessions by the accused. Now, why is this significant? It's significant because I'm going to back you up with the news report that I just gave you on Fox News. It's of interest that after the Fox News report that came out on May 13th, which is just about a month ago now, according to this video, from the date of this video, is I went to go see exactly what the judge had, what determinations he had made from that trial, because as you heard, the judge was to make a decision on whether or not to release those names where the 9/11 victims and family had brought this to court. It's of interest that I could not find anywhere where these proceedings were even held. Now, it wasn't my imagination that I saw this news report. I just happened to keep it because I had forwarded it on to Leonard Bacani for his information. But when I went back to even find that particular video, I couldn't even find that anywhere. I just happened to have it because of a text message that I sent. But that news report, I couldn't find anywhere. So I had one of our licensed investigators here at Seavine. I said, can you please look to see if you can find, any type of proceedings, how this happened, where it happened, what the actual ruling was, what came out of it, what happened. He couldn't find a thing anywhere that it even existed. So that's just a point of interest. So it wasn't just me with my looking, but other people looking at that point in period of time. Nobody could find anything. So moving forward to this, point number 6, the accused plotters were charged on June 6, et cetera, and they were deciding whether or not to hold it in federal court. Why this is of interest is in a federal court, no testimony allowed from torture in the military tribunals would be allowed in a federal court. Now, why is that of importance? Because at the time, it is alleged in these military tribunal transcripts that they are stating that there is a strong possibility that the linguist was able to identify al-Baluchi, who is one of the alleged terrorists being held in GITMO, because of his voice being heard under torture. And so the linguist was able to take that voice and be able to determine one of the people that was in the taped phone calls was indeed al-Baluchi. So if they are able to remove this to federal, or move this over to federal court, then they are not going to be allowed to be able to use the information showing that it was indeed al-Baluchi that was in the taped phone calls, because it was obtained under torture, if that is indeed exactly where the linguist had obtained the actual voices to be able to identify. So the reason they are trying very hard to move this over to federal court is because federal court will not allow many things that can be used as testimony to be able to prove things, whereas in military tribunals, there is a lot more leeway in what they can do. And this can be important. The point is that there has been and there continues to be an ongoing saga of ways to try and keep this under lock and key. So that's the reason I am bringing this up, and we are going to have to see what exactly happens within the military tribunals. Now, number 7, defense counsel of al-Baluchi has been arguing to have his trials moved to federal court with the argument that at the time of Baluchi's alleged atrocities, they were not technically at war. War had not been declared yet. Okay, so therefore, he should be tried in a federal court and not in a military tribunal. If it is ruled to be moved to federal court, could this set a precedent for the others and cause certain problems for we the people in learning the identities of the taped conversations? So as we move forward tomorrow in the beginnings of the June 17th KSM et al. Tribunals, these are things to keep in mind as you listen to how they make their arguments. Now, that for the most part is what we were going to be preparing you for these coming up tomorrow. You are going to want to take particular interest because this all comes out for whatever reason on who exactly was in those taped phone calls. You can see how a domino effect can happen if high-level members of our government were indeed complicit, and or many others, and this is just a possibility, the Clinton Foundation as the actual institution. I don't know. It has not been put out there yet, but it's something to consider. All these things seem to be held back from coming out. So you are going to want to pay particular attention. Again, remember, July 4th, President Trump promised was going to be one of the best July 4ths ever. Okay, so enough of the tribunals coming up. This is for those of you that are interested in who is being tried right now in GITMO. And those of you that already know, you can go ahead and shut this off right now, but these are for the others that do not know. Who are the accused in the KSM et al. The pre-trials? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, called KSM, is accused of engineering the September 11th attacks by proposing the plot to Osama bin Laden in 1996, overseeing the operation and training the hijackers in Afghanistan and Pakistan. You can go on here and you can read this. It is in the report that I have that this video is attached to. Okay, and then there is Walid bin Atash, allegedly ran an Al-Qaeda training camp in Logar, Afghanistan, where two of the September 19th, 2011 hijackers were trained. Osama bin Laden allegedly selected him as a September 11th hijacker, but he was prevented from participating when he was arrested and briefly detained in Yemen in early 2001. It is of interest. It tells a little bit about his background. There is a picture of him there. Okay. Ramzi bin al-Shabi, a Yemeni, allegedly helped the German cell of hijackers find flight schools and entered the United States and helped finance the operation. He allegedly was selected to be one of the hijackers and made a martyr video, but was 4 times denied a visa at U.S. embassies in both Berlin and his native Sana'a, Yemen. So you can go ahead and read some of the background of him, who he is, and what had happened from there. Imar al-Baluchi, our money man, This is where, this is the guy of interest, the one that you need to pay the closest attention to. And he is charged as Ali Abi al-Aziz Ali, is alleged to have been sent approximately $120,000 to the hijackers for their expenses and flight training, and helped 9 of them travel to the United States. He was born and raised in Kuwait, and is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's nephew because his mother is KSML's brother. Okay, that's of interest, but $120,000, I don't know. This is the guy that they're trying to say is really the mastermind, and also the one that they had absolutely found that was in the taped phone calls from the FBI and the CIA. Well, this guy was talking to a whole lot of other people. That's why he's of major interest that you need to be watching. All right, and Mustafa Ahmed al-Hawasi, a Saudi, is alleged to have helped some of the hijackers with money, Western clothing, traveler's checks, and credit cards from the office of Dubai, etc., etc. So that's there for you to read. The September 11, 2001 Military Commission conspiracy charges, for those of you that have not been keeping up with this. 7 crimes are alleged in the 9/11 sworn charge sheet, starting with conspiracy specifically with Osama bin Laden and other senior al-Qaeda members in the 9/11 hijackers. They're also charged with committing murder in the violation of the law of war, attacking civilians and terrorism, etc., etc. Now, I know I can hear some of you now. It's like, you don't care about these guys. I want to know what's going on with the people that were really handling this and what's happening. You guys, these guys are the key, okay? These guys are going to lead you to exactly what you're looking for. So it's close. So please don't say, I want to see what this is going on and what this is happening now. A whole lot has been suppressed and squashed down, washed down for a very long time. This is D-Day. This is D-Day. And you need to pay attention and understand a little bit about what the background is. Okay, and now this is just FYI. Above and beyond the KSM et al. Trials, there are 4 other trials that are going on. It's the USS Cole, which is with Abdi al-Rahim Hussein Muhammad Abdu al-Nashiri, and so we call him Nashiri. Interesting things have been going on behind the scenes, big time, having to do with this trial. His had to do with the bombing of the USS Cole. So a lot of things have been going on behind the scenes, and if you look at the previous video that I suggested to you, you can find out exactly what's going on, and it is of interest, although it is completely separate, obviously, from the KSM et al. Trials. And then there is Mahid Shukat Khan. We call him the Khan trials. And Khan was charged before a military commission with conspiracy, murder, and violation of the law of war, attempted murder in violation of the law of war, providing material support for terrorism and spying. Mr. Khan resided with his family near Baltimore, Maryland from 1996 through 2002. Shortly after September 11, 2001, he traveled to Pakistan to explore the possibility of entering Afghanistan for the purpose of jihad. While in Pakistan, Khan agreed to be a suicide bomber in the failed al-Qaeda plot to assassinate the former Pakistani president Pervez Musharraf. He subsequently returned to the United States, gathering information for future terrorist activities, and later covertly delivered $50,000 of al-Qaeda money to Jemaah Islamiyah to finance the Indonesian JW Marriott Hotel bombing in August 2003, which resulted in the killing of 11 people. More information about that is right there. Now, we're almost done here. Abdi al-Hadi which is an Iraqi. Mr. Hadi is charged with denying quarter, attacking protected property, using treachery or perfidy, and attempted to use treachery or perfidy in a series of attacks in Afghanistan and Pakistan between 2003 and 2004. The conspiracy to commit law of war offenses. Pretrial proceedings are ongoing. Okay, and then El Darbi was charged with providing material support for terrorism and conspiracy for allegedly planning to carry out terrorist attacks against shipping vessels in the Straits of Hormuz. The charges were dismissed without prejudice. So this is one of the trials that came out that they dismissed it. There wasn't enough evidence to prove that he had much to do with anything. Because remember what we talked about, because of what Obama had said, these people can be held AUMF. Okay, remember that? Basically prisoners of war. They don't have to be charged with anything, even though he was found to be innocent. He is being held under that, and so he won't be released. And apparently there are a number of others that have gone through the same circumstance. Okay, so it's continuing to ongo. There's more information here, but that for the most part is it. So tomorrow, June 17th, you're going to want to take close attention. We are going to be covering these trials, whether it is with us or it will be some of our others. Sevine, citizen journalist, will be there and will be in Fort Meade. The trials are going to be happening in GITMO in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and they will be live streamed via CCTV into Fort Meade Military Base in Baltimore, Maryland, where we will have our team there covering these for you. So good night, everybody. Keep an eye out. Things are ready to rock and roll. You are not going to want to miss this.